Hey, it's Lucky. I've been busy. Ever since I've got my drawing tablet, I've been making assets left and right. It's just such a nice flow to get into, modeling an asset, unwrapping it, and then painting it, seeing your imaginary world come to life. In today's video, I wanted to showcase some of the assets I've made, show you how you can use them in Godot, and talk a little bit about future videos. So, let's jump into the first demo scene. This is the scene I used to test out the models. It's a very basic scene. The floor, walls and ceilings are all in my free texture pack. I'll leave a download link to that below as well. And the wood beams on the ceilings and on the sides are just the wood texture slapped on a box model and placed in there. I created the scene to set up the models in some lighting, and it was very motivating to add more models to fill out this room. A couple of tricks I used in this room to make it seem more fun is the lights are flickering, so the intensity of the light is changing a little bit every second. I gave the floor tiling some reflection by just dragging the same texture into the roughness as I'm using for the albedo. It gives this nice shimmery look. And I gave the whole scene an ambient light of this deeper blue, and then the lighting is all orange, so it creates this nice contrast. I think it turned out pretty great, but I was really motivated at this point and I really wanted to go for that dungeon vibe, so I decided to also create a tile set for a dungeon generator and wrote this very basic dungeon generation script. Now I might have gone a little overboard here. I added these windows to the tile set to make it look like there's people living in the walls. And I added little spider webs, and every time I would open this scene I would just instantly want to add more assets to fill out this world a little more. I'm not yet releasing the tile set for the dungeon, but I definitely will, so if you want it, subscribe. But it's not really polished yet and I want to clean it up a little bit more. And I want to get more experience in dungeon generation, so I could make a tutorial on dungeon generation when releasing this tile set, so you can actually use it. But yeah, I've been having so much fun with Godot recently. Like, the rendering capabilities have been surprising me at every step of the way. I've been getting into these shaders for the torches, and just making these assets and making these worlds is so much fun, and I've been really enjoying it. So there's a lot more fun and pretty stuff to come on the channel, so definitely subscribe. I'll stop now with the eye candy and get into the assets and how you can use them, and also explain a little bit how I export these assets so they're very usable in Godot. And I'll quickly break down the demo scene so you can get an idea of how I set up the lighting and all the effects. Bit of a rough cut coming from the epic audio down to this tutorial. I got all the music and sound effects, by the way, from this humble bundle. I'm not sure it will be up for offer when the video launches. It's only 3 hours left. But yeah, these are all the sound effects I used. It's a giant pack of game sound effects. Definitely check it out if you liked what you heard. With that out of the way, let's get into the models and the textures. So the textures are already released. It will be the second link, and the first link will be the models. I structured them in containers, so these are the barrels and the crates, and all the furniture pieces. But I'll show you how to set them up in Godot. So let's launch that. I'll create a new project to show this off. So one thing to keep in mind when importing a bunch of models into Godot is to have a nice file structure. because Godot will unpack the textures and it will make a bunch of files, so don't just drop it into your main folder. Actually structure it. I like to create an assets folder, and in there create a models folder, and even in the models folder create a folder for the model pack or the type of models that you're going to be using, just to keep everything organized. So then you want to open up the pack, drag and drop the folders into your file structure. It's going to import all these models and textures. And I'll also import my texture pack. So back in my assets folder, create a new folder. Textures. And another folder for the texture pack. And then I'll just drag all of these in. Alright, so how I set up the scene was just creating a 3D scene and adding the world environment in there. So the 3 dots on the top, add world environment, and there's no sun in there, so I just disable the sun by clicking the little sun icon. Then how I set up the room, they're just some basic meshes, so I'll just go in there. Add node mesh instance 3D and add a box mesh. Where is it? And then scale it up to be the floor. We'll make this room 10 by 10. And I'll drag it down so it's on the origin. And then for the material, I'll create a new material. Set the albedo to the checkered texture. And then I'll set the UV1 to triplanar. And there you go, that's the floor. And you can just duplicate it. Control D, I used to duplicate that mesh. Drag it up. Make the mesh unique, otherwise it's going to copy the properties of this one below. So right click the mesh, make unique. And then create another material. Make an albedo. Quick load, let's use the dark wood for the ceiling. Again, going down to UV1, enabling triplanar. And then I'll quickly set up the walls as well. Then let's set up the lighting. So I'm going to go into my world environment, go to background and change it from sky to custom color. And I'll just select this deep blue. Give it a little more energy. Something like that. And I also like to enable the SSAO. You can see it creates these gradients in the corner. Just adds a nice effect. And let's add the lights. So I'll just right click my C node, search for a light, and add an OmniLight 3D. I'd like to enable shadows on these in the right and set the lighting color to something a little warmer. Alright, and at this point it's just going to be a lot of tinkering. So let me just turn down the world lighting a little bit, maybe 0.4. Yeah, it's a little more moody. And then let me show you how to use these assets. I'm just going to go into models, props, furniture. Let's see. Let's add a table, a couple of benches. It's just dragging and dropping. Cool. A chair. Here in the corner, maybe some barrels. And why not a crate? Also here a little crate and a couple barrels. Oh. And maybe a little stool. And now you can see this scene is looking quite flat. The colors are all blending into one and there's not a lot of saturation. This is very easily created in Godot by going into your world environment, going down below to adjustment, enable, and then you can play with the contrast and the saturation. I'm just going to turn the contrast up a bit. 1.2, saturation 1.2, turn that down. You can see the colors already starting to pop a lot more. I'm actually gonna go back into my SSAO setting, turn up the intensity a little bit to get more shadows. And this is really where all the tinkering comes in. So for example, you can grab all your walls, duplicate them. Oh. Drag them down. Scale them in a little bit to give a trim to the sides of the wall. And you could, oh. Now you can swap out the texture. To create a little trim around the edges. And it's also how I set up the wood beams in the center. Yeah, it's just a lot of tinkering, finding out what looks nice, building out your scene with these assets. So yeah, with these assets and textures, it's very easy to slap together a scene that looks quite nice. It's a nice way of learning to have some visual objects instead of just plain boxes and cubes. So I hope you'll download the packs, play around with them. If you make something cool, be sure to link me. And the rest of the assets, the torches and the tile set for the dungeon are launching very soon. So hit subscribe if you want to see that. And until next time, bye.